Doofiend here, coming to you from the Combined Arms module. I'm looking at a P-51D Mustang. It was known as a ground attack aircraft after World War II, and even in the closing days of World War II, particularly through the Korean War. It was loaded up with rockets and bombs and machine guns, and its job was to patrol areas, find targets, and be able to either engage those targets or identify those targets for other aircraft with heavier weapons to be able to engage. So it would mark targets, it would find targets, it would prosecute targets. Now this is the C-101CC. I see that in much a similar role in that it's got cannons, it's got bombs, it's got machine guns, it's got the ability to mark targets as well as be able to fly slowly and low enough to be able to identify those targets and mark them for heavier aircraft, much the way that the P-51 was able to. What some people seem to can't get over is the fact that with it having a tandem cockpit, most people will see that tandem cockpit and say, oh, this is clearly intended for training. You would put a new pilot in one of the seats and you put an experienced pilot in the other seat, and that would be how you would train a pilot that didn't know much about flight sims and get the basics of flight and weapons engagement all sorted out in a trainer. I would, if it were up to me, recommend that a new pilot and an experienced pilot learn the basics of flight, takeoff, and landing in one of these, and then graduate straight to the target aircraft, which, like I said, is probably an F-18, and learn those same skills in that, and then learn weapons employment. I just don't see the advantage of learning weapons employment with somebody in the back seat. I just don't see the strong advantage to that. Now, in L-39, there'll be more on this later, there's another one where people see the tandem seats and say, oh, well, clearly that's all that this good aircraft is good for. The Yak-52 and also the Christian Eagle II both are cost-effective, simple aircraft in which to teach the basics of flight. And then you could go straight from one of those to an F-18. At least that's how I would do it if I were trying a new F-18 pilot. Just far more cost-effective in that you've already bought the F-18, presumably you bought the super carrier. Why wouldn't you just do that? Now, the A-10 is a fantastic air-to-ground platform. Carries tons of weapons, has lots of armor, it's got lots of fuel. All of this makes it very heavy. Now, the advantage of being light like the C-101 is that you can patrol an area, you can spot, and you can circle around without losing sight, whereas the weight of the A-10 requires a JTAC and a spotter. I would suggest using the 101 as a spotter and the A-10 as an air-to-ground platform, bringing the heavy weapons down, and using the C-101 to support that. But that is just how I would do it. Similarly, the F-18, even with its advanced sensors, would greatly benefit from support from the C-101. Putting a smoke down on a target, finding the targets for the F-18s so that they can bring their guided weapons down. One interesting point I'd like to make is about the F-5. Now, the F-5 has a air-to-ground role in much the same way that it has an air-to-air role. It's a very versatile fighter. The problem is, once you strap enough ordnance to the F-5 with its high wing loading, or already high wing loading, it becomes quite slow. Now, it's actually more or less the same speed, if not a little bit slower, all loaded up, than a C-101CC with the same armament. So C-101 can carry 4 bombs, as well as plenty of fuel and a pair of sidewinders for self-protection. This same loadout on the F5E makes it quite slow and very vulnerable. I think that the C-101 does that air-to-ground job a little bit better. Again, with the sidewinders, I think that it does just as good of a job as the F5E as in the air-to-air roll, right up until you need to be supersonic. The F5E is really only good with sidewinders and a little bit of fuel. I would not take it air-to-ground. So to say that one thing is better than another is subjective. It just depends on what the job is. It is a toolbox. It could be the F1, it could be the A10, it could be the F18, it could be the F5E, it could be the C-101. They all have different capabilities, and in that desired role, they all each individually have their strengths and weaknesses. I think that perhaps the job is what should determine the aircraft, and not what aircraft you happen to have, and try to apply it to each of these jobs. So hopefully I provided some context in what the C-101 is and isn't, how it compares to some of these other aircraft, and how it can complement some of these other aircraft. And yeah, I do not regret flying the C-101. I think that I will continue to use it. To wrap things up here, I appreciate you watching this far, and if you like this type of content, feel free to comment, like, and or subscribe. Go ahead and let me know in the content or comments section which aircraft you would like to see me do next. And Dooffiend out.